Here we go. All right, there we are. Hey, YouTube, Triple A here, along with the Duff once again. Duff, say hello.
Hey everyone.
All right, guys. So last week, Duff and I were talking about some memo-y things, and to kind of continue on that rabbit hole stuff, we won't mention too much because, of course, you've all been bombarded with different allegations, I'm sure, over this past week. But I just wanted to make a small mention that there has been more proof of wrongdoing by certain people involving certain administrations and certain people trying to cover up hidden money laundering and other such schemes and some biases towards certain organizations involving the presidency and trying to go and save face with people. Um, Again, there's of course much more detail to read about, but the last thing I actually heard this week was someone testifying about the Obama administration's dealings with Russia and how corrupt that whole nonsense was. So, all I can really say right now is it looks like, once again, ironically, let's blame President Trump for things that he didn't really have anything to do with, and it sounds as though there's a lot of corruption with the Hillary Clinton Obama administration, and not necessarily an "I told you so" moment, but there seems to be a lot of bad stuff going on. So maybe Obama's tape of "I swear there's no bias in the FBI," maybe that was kind of a lie. So we'll see how it has to come out because obviously not all the facts are out yet, but it's looking pretty bad. Duff, any thoughts on that whole thing?
Um, it's amazing how much of the time Trump has been able to kind of look into his crystal ball and throw some terminology out there that has come to fit the stories which come out of any investigation into the prior administration, but also any investigation into various branches of government. And to be like, this is a deep state. Oh, we got to worry about the deep state. And it's like, well, it appears we do. And that not surprisingly, the FBI, whose job is to essentially keep America safe from clandestine as well as external threats, tends to play buddy buddy with whoever's in charge and whoever's in charge of the State Department. And you wonder how can you prevent that from happening to a degree, because everyone's partisan in their own way, and the fact that people could get information and basically circulate information through the State Department in order to get play through the FBI in order to go and pursue a political agenda through the FISA court. Um, all sort of speaks to the fact that there's a little bit too much, buddy buddy uh, relationships going on between political powers and government entities, which are supposed to exist outside of direct political favoritism. So yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where the left, or at least elements of the left, are proving the very person who they hate right over and over and over again. And you kind of go, how is this so easy for Trump when clearly he's just throwing nonsense words out there, and then suddenly a story crops up to fit exactly, or at least pretty close to what he said.
Yeah, it is pretty impressive how there are major screw ups and other people coming. I mean, it's crazy to think about how some people kind of go, all right, things are getting corrupt enough where I have to say, hey, you know what? You guys have screwed me over, or something has happened, and I need to stand up for myself and say, here's the whistleblower. I was with them. They stole my money. They're gonna, drag me out and get rid of me this way, give me the sacrifice, so I'm gonna beat them to the punch, and we're gonna say, hey, XYZ person told me to do this, it's not cool anymore. So it's crazy to see how many things have happened, how corrupt things have been, and just again, not all the facts are out yet. But at the same time, it sounds like many people and agencies have been working directly to uh, be basically join the anti-Trump movement and kind of thing. So hopefully more things come out. That's crazy to see. On the other, since we're on the crazy note, I don't know, Duff, if you've heard anything. I've just been reading and heard some things recently about more trying to fight the power stuff. I guess a few days ago there was a announcement where a small story about Sports Illustrated trying to fight the power, if you will, and trying to go and use models in the magazines to fight the patriarchy by putting messages on their magazines, empowering women, yet still using fairly close to naked models and that kind of thing. So, for anyone out there, listening, if you make a Sports Illustrated magazine and have very attractive females on the magazine and try to, stick to the man, not sure if you're gonna, meet your goal. But unfortunately, if you make them attractive, I still will probably say that most men will look at the picture and maybe they will find the message in an underlying picture. So, not sure. But Duff, have you heard anything about that story?
Oh yeah, no, I've heard about this story, and it's a red herring in that Sports Illustrated will always try and push both something to appeal to their demographics who are going to buy it, and that's the majority of those are men, but also to try and catch some interest from the wider media. In the days of things like pornography, in the days of Instagram, the idea of having a magazine that has, let's say, one hand reading potential is kind of going the way of the dodo bird. And so they have to try and hop on whatever pop topic is trending in the media. And to have the models and the photographer going out and being like, oh, this is so empowering, this is so great. But also knowing that if we're looking at how people react to the sight of scantily clad, uh, very well proportioned, or at least very fit women, it tends to have a negative correlation with women, meaning that they feel worse about themselves when they look at such things. And it tends to have a unrelated but usually sexually connotated reaction for men. So men go, "Oh my God, that's beautiful," and I want to buy that. And the people who produced the magazine knew that already. And the women who purchased the magazine, some might purchase it because they like to look at really well-toned female forms. They might like the articles. You never know. But this is simply Sports Illustrated doing what it does best, which is packaging things in such a way that they'll sell as many copies as possible. And they're piggybacking it on a hot topic. And I guess all power to them, but it's a really cynical thing. And that's where I kind of have to shrug and go, well, if you're going to jump on or allow your movement to be taken over by corporate entities while claiming that you're empowering people, then you don't understand what corporate entities are trying to do anyways. And the fool is you, not everyone else. So I don't know. What do you think there, AAA?
I mean, on the one hand, yes, I think we can all agree that, fighting against sexual harassment is a good thing. I don't see anyone here or usually saying, "Hey, I am pro abusing people, women, whomever, and getting away with it, and I'm pro power over an individual in a sexual or any other way." I think we're all in agreement that, rape and sexual harassment is bad. So
Mm.
let's put that down. And using this method to fight back and hashtag the Me Too movement. Um, on the one hand, good idea. On the other hand, really, really, really questionable way to fight that. I mean, this kind of goes back to the, I kneel for the national anthem kind of stuff. Okay, I appreciate your attempt at saying here's a problem, but maybe the methodology is mistaken, and that's the important part. So you're not. I don't think you're changing the right lens, or maybe you think differently on the. Maybe I said that instead of incorrectly there, Duff.
No, I don't think you're incorrect. I think that with things like the Me Too movement, there is a lot of good which is coming out of it. But it's what Sports Illustrated and what the people who are sort of trying to claim this mantle are doing is confusing where the goalposts are. So Ben Shapiro actually mentioned that in the previous year's Sports Illustrated, one of the models said women don't have to dress modestly to was it to be respected or to function in the workplace or something like that.
We got
But
yeah.
the thing is, what she's failing to note then is that what is the happy medium? Because it would almost beg the question that, okay, yes, they don't have to dress modestly, but what's normal dress? And if normal dress actually scales towards the sexy end of the spectrum, she's kind of saying nothing at all. So we don't want to blame people who get dressed in the way they want to get dressed for attracting unwanted attention. But we also want to be able to say that people who dress in a way that is supposed to be physically provocative are dressing in a way which they know will get them certain types of attention, or at least in a manner that is going to increase their likelihood of getting particular types of attention. So they're kind of speaking into a vacuum, and at the same time, buying into what Sports Illustrated is telling them. It's like, oh, this is a celebration of the human form. And it's like, well, I would say that Michelangelo's David is a huge celebration of the human form, and it doesn't necessarily have to be sexually titillating in the same way the Venus de Milo and things like that are celebrations of the human form, but don't necessarily have to be sexually titillating. But Sports Illustrated is designed to be sexually titillating out of hand, and to say, oh, well, we're going to take people who are above average body types. In fact, they're so above average body types. And even when we're trying to get plus size women to do this, we're picking the very best looking plus size women. It's not as if you're making something which is representative of the average person, or even the inordinately people inordinately on the other end of the spectrum, someone who is actually physically not good looking in any way, shape, or form. And yet you're claiming to be able to speak on all of their behalf. And it honestly comes down to, well, if you're trying to tell us that we need to respect women for more than just their physical looks, of course we do, but you actually need to get us to get to know those people and actually have them say things like, I forget which supermodel it was, but she goes, I'm really annoyed because I know the way that I look and the way that I have to portray myself as a supermodel makes other women feel bad about themselves, and I don't like that. But we don't have that voice. We have, oh, it's empowering to be able to celebrate naked women. And it's like, but is it really though?
Yeah, it's and yeah, again, I think it's a the attempt has been made, potentially good, good and bad for them to want to speak out. Great, great on you. I agree. Potentially, this is not the best method or way to do so. I'm glad that's going to do well. Obviously, that's their whole prerogative of, hey, men like looking at things, looking at women who are very attractive. That's happened. We're going to push this movement. So good on them to do so, and hopefully, something does happen. But I think just the um serious, or not the seriousness, but the drive that they have is potentially misplaced. But again, then there's always people along with this movement who I even read an article earlier today about one journalist was talking about how women should stop reading books that were uh, uh, penned by men because reasons and stuff. So again, I think that this is all maybe good intention, but sending the wrong message in a way. So hopefully the good things come out of this. But I really don't know if this is as effective as they want it to be. So let's, good and bad for the Me Too movement. I hope that things change, but I hope that other people don't get burned because they kind of got caught in the crossfire of, oh, hey, I mean, kind of uh, thinking before, men can be kind of stupid. Sorry to say that, guys, but we are visual creatures. We like the visual, and we're gonna see things later on. Overall, women are not. Women are much more emotional, and a lot of guys don't get that. A lot of guys will ignore the, hey, you know what? As the phrase goes, my eyes are up here. That's great, but the body stuff is really cool to me. Eventually, I'll get to know you, and that leads down to other bad paths. So it's uh, I guess, knowing your audience, and it doesn't really matter what you meant, it matters what happens, and you should probably know by now what guys are into and that kind of thing. So, I don't know. Hopefully, this does
I,
move
I,
things farther, if that's good to say there, Duff. Maybe, maybe.
I'm going to have to try and take a step back here and problematize the idea that what they want is actually a good. Because I have a feeling that the people behind this particular issue of Sports Illustrated would jump on the body positivity movement and all of these things, which essentially say there's nothing wrong with you, and that no one should ever criticize you, and that no one should ever question you, and your feelings about yourself are always justified. Um, and I really don't like that, because it doesn't actually leave the room for improvement. And I don't think they actually do want to create improvement, because imagine if, per se, everyone for, let's say, 10 generations becomes of the opinion that they want to take good care of themselves, they want to live long, healthy, active lives. Well, that might actually produce a society for which Sports Illustrated can no longer sell any covers or any magazines, because if the average person looks really good and is really healthy, you'd have to move the goalposts on to what are we going to sell as something that has sex appeal. And so they're very much parlaying this idea that, oh, look how great this is. But then they would probably jump down the throat of someone who goes, okay, well, those people look good, but have they cleaned up their room, a la Jordan Peterson? Have they actually grappled with the world and become better people? Or is it that they're just really pretty? And so everybody says, oh, how great they are. And that's where their good intentions fall apart, because they want to be able to say, oh, look, we're piggybacking on Me Too, but they're doing nothing to try and equip women to say no, or they're doing nothing to try and equip women to be like, hey, I am responsible for my actions. I am of the same opinion of first and second wave feminists that in order to be equal, we risk things which we otherwise wouldn't. We do not want to be coddled. We do not want to be put in a box. And we do not want people to say about our gender, oh, don't worry, it's just women. They're more emotional than us. And so this becomes a hugely cynical thing, which I don't think helps women. I don't think it actually helps the people who are trying to advocate for the Me Too kind of thing. And I think it really paints a bad picture of our society, because it determines that men are always going to be one thing and women are always going to be misunderstood for the perfection that they are. And it's just like, but nobody's perfect. We're both part of the same race. And you are just trying to market something off of the back of public outrage. And I don't buy it. I don't want it. Get rid of it.
No, that's fair. I mean, no, I agree. I think that the I guess I can understand. Maybe what I should say is I understand what they're trying to do, and I think that their end result, yes, you're correct, is not necessarily the equality of stuff. It is more the, hey, this is my way, get out of my way. Here's what I'm gonna do. And again, overall, like we've said, I don't believe that there is going to be a, what, Sports Illustrated did this. All right, they did X, Y, Z. Now we're going to change the end result. Well, no, I mean you've taken the models that we're used to seeing, and you put new hashtags and new words in different places. So is this going to do much to help your cause? Probably not. So that is kind of the, I guess, good news, if you will, about the things aren't going to change a whole lot because they themselves have not changed much. Therefore, their uh, movement to make things better probably won't change much either. So I mean, it's nice to see that they attempted. I don't think much is going to work. But on that note, I do know that going on things that actually are working. I've read an article about there's a new Gerber baby, I guess, picture model on the title of or on the bottles of Gerber food, and I guess that is the one of the first babies to have Down syndrome. So that's a good thing to do there. Good cause they're fighting for. Have you heard anything about that kind of situation there, Duff?
Um, Sort of in a secondhand sort of way. Whatever Gerber wants to do in terms of who the Gerber baby is going to be, that's their choice. But I do think it's really cool that they're willing to have people of different ethnicities, people with genetic disabilities or genetic disorders to be that particular baby. I think it's neat, and I'm going to attempt not to be cynical about their selection. Because the thing is, if they had just never come up with the Gerber baby thing and just had one Gerber baby, of course, we wouldn't be worried about whether the Gerber baby is somehow representational. But I'm glad that we have somebody who has Down syndrome or even someone who has autism actually appearing as that child, and not segregating it to a particular look or a particular typology. So no, good for them. But I do want to take one quick step back to the Sports Illustrated thing, because Kate
Sure.
Upton this week has been in the news for saying that photographers had been, or who is it? Not a photographer, but rather the head of Guess, the creative department, had in fact essentially physically assaulted her, or allegedly physically assaulted her in a sexual manner. And so once again, we see the utter hypocrisy of Sports Illustrated being like, oh, we're doing this for women, while within the fashion industry, we have people with predatory behavior in high places, and because of their power, they can silence people. So, good on Kate Upton for speaking out about this, and I think that's good.
Yeah, no, I agree. I did hear a story on those lines with Kate Upton and her being herself being harassed by someone up top. So I mean, hey, she's a model. She should speak out. She did. So I hope that I'm glad she called it out, and hopefully things get fixed. Who knows? But it sounds as though um and actually, with that note, I think it's just kind of crazy to hear everyone who is so, hey, you know what? Hashtag me too. I stand with XYZ person kind of deal, and just the the it seems as though people that are for the movement, the people that have actually had harassment happen to them, are living in two completely different realities. With the whole, oh, hey, it's we the one half of, hey, I'm going through this thing, I've been harassed here, and this isn't cool. And then there's the other side of, all right, well, I'm all for this stuff, but they're just so used to that lifestyle that they're kind of saying, oh yeah, this is par for the curse, and everyone's kind of like, well, wait a minute, that's not right. And I get that you're used to this kind of environment, but that's not how things should be. So let's, not don't just use this as a platform for yourself. Speak out and be for, or speak out and guard and uh, just protect the people who have been vocal about incidents with harassment, and you don't just kind of say, oh yeah, well, things change. I'm gonna yell and scream. So I mean, it's interesting to see both sides of that and see how kind of split the higher ups are and kind of thing. Which actually brings me to the other topic I wanted to mention to you, of course. I don't know how much you have heard about things, but I've been looking at a few things over speaking of splitting in reality, it sounds as though our government, here, at least here in the U.S., is really split on certain deals going on with immigration, and it seems that there has been no progress there, and there's potential another shutdown that will happen again and again and again, and we just can't agree on things. So, I guess, Duff, I don't know what you've heard about that, but have you heard any shutdown talks, and or can you see, I guess, if can you see another shutdown happening again for us?
Well, what are we? We're in like day something like 22 of the last deal, so they're going to have to remake one anyways. This is just politics. This is essentially if you can't come to any sort of consensus, if you can't act across party lines, one party is going to try and put the brakes on the other one. And we'll see how effective it is. Because if you keep on shutting down the government, which I think we talked about this 2 weeks ago, where a government shutdown is essentially you just shut Congress and you shut the Senate, but all of the automated parts of government, like taxing, is like public health, public this, public whatever, still run. So essentially, something like 98% of the government still runs without the government being there. And so it turns into, can we get enough press on our side to say that, oh, look, by shutting down the government, we're actually doing something good, versus, oh, they keep on shutting down the government. Isn't that really annoying? Maybe we should go and vote for the other guys to make sure that they don't shut down the government. So they're playing with fire, and I don't actually know if they're playing with an effective deck of cards, because in essence, they're saying we don't want to fund the American military, we don't want to fund Trump's potential DACA solution, which was more generous than ours. And we would rather make sure that nothing passes, because we feel at this point in time that if the elections, the midterm elections come around, we might win more seats and therefore be able to stymie them even more. But once again, the trade-off is, by trying to stymie them, are you going to lose votes? And I think, at least my read on it, is that they're very fearful that they are. Because, of course, we had Democrats speaking out, being like, this is dumb. It's not just that we can't come to a bipartisan solution, it's that what we're fighting for doesn't really have any political capital at the moment. But what are your thoughts, AAA?
Well, I think that, yeah, I mean, at the one hand, like we've discussed last time, shutdown is not the end of the world. I mean, kind of who cares? On the one hand, good because, we should conserve things and the government can't spend money now, so that's pretty nice for our wallets tax wise. And it's really unfortunate, or I guess maybe fortunate to see how much, Trump's kind of said, hey, here's the deal, here's what you want to do. Well, I'll come even farther with you. Let's make a deal, and they still go, you know what? I am so anti-Trump that there's nothing you can say or do that I'm willing to agree with. So unless you give me specifically what I want, and who knows, maybe even they could say, "Hey, Trump, give me everything at once and then some. When he does all of that, then they could still say, you know what, I don't like you, so I'm still going to say no to everything you want to say. So it does look pretty bad on them, and I don't know why there needs to be all this posturing towards, hey, we're fighting for blah 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 and stuff, because it on the one hand, before it was kind of the, hey, we're fighting for these people, and this reason why, and we're fighting for the dreamers. We want to make sure everyone that comes here is welcome and has everything that they need. Now it's turned into the we need to have everything we want our way, and which is
Hmm.
weird because again, Trump kind of gave them what they wanted more, and so it's becoming very evident that they're just anti-Trump. So I think that they should be afraid of the elections this coming year, and I don't think that they're really, uh, you know, making any good plans to win anyone over. I think that was evident towards the State of the Union, where I mean, I don't think anyone stood or really clapped for much of anything Trump said, which was pretty balanced overall. I mean, I think that a lot of the talking points that they say about unemployment and the economy and all those things. I mean, Trump hit pretty well, and he did a fairly good job about saying, "Hey, we're doing pretty all right." And everyone said that if I got to be elected, it'd be the end of the world. Here are the stats. Here's all the facts about the economy. We're okay, and Democrats just want to have nothing of it. But I think that also this just shows how fractured the Democratic Party is about, hey, here's the I must, be extremely this direction because that's what I've been saying for the past year or two. And then there's the people kind of saying, hey, we can't get anything done because you guys keep posturing. I do know because I watched a little bit of the filibuster by Nancy Pelosi that she gave a long talk on why everything must happen her way, and even her own part is kind of saying, what are you doing? This is not going to help out at all. So I hope that on the one hand, let everything happen the way it is. Maybe we'll get even more majority in for Republicans this election cycle, and see what happens there. I really don't know if there's any redeeming qualities left for Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer regarding immigration and stuff. So maybe they can. Again, I don't know how their terms are working right now, but potentially they can get voted out or taken, someone else can switch spots with them or something in those lines. But it sounds like there needs to be a lot of repositioning in the Democratic Party kind of thing. So I mean, I guess I hope it gets shut down. But at this rate, I guess who knows? I don't know, Duff. Uh, do you think the Democrats will see the light pretty soon, or maybe not?
Well, I think what they'll see is that the establishment that is speaking for them currently may be at the end of its rope because they're not actually offering alternatives. And then you have Nancy Pelosi trying to do the filibuster by basically speaking over and over and over again, and then making the, let's say, postmodernist Marxist statement that the illegal immigrants have helped our nation. In fact, we should be thankful for them. And it's like, well, that runs into the problem of presupposing that there wasn't something about your nation that was appealing to them to begin with. Because you don't really see illegal immigrants trying to bash their way into Mexico. You don't really see illegal immigrants trying to get into North Korea. You don't really see illegal immigrants to the same degree getting any play in Russia, even though a lot of people do try to get into Russia for financial reasons too. And so it becomes a straw man because it's like, it's not the illegal immigrants that are doing something great for our nation. It's that our nation is great and therefore we attract all kinds of people. The thing which is really problematic is that we have to make the decision between, are we just going to let people in who go through the process and therefore only let in people from a very select group and a very small group? Or are we going to say that we have a mercy clause as well? Because many of the people who are trying to come in that aren't strictly economic migrants wouldn't have been able to come to our country anyways through the initial program. So it speaks to sort of the poverty and the lack of depth of what Nancy Pelosi is supposedly standing for, and hence why her filibuster kind of turns her into a talking head that is not expounding on anything deeper in her own narrative than what we can what we can sort of pull from the headlines. So she's saying nothing, she's using newspeak, and she's trying to prevent government from happening. Now, filibustering is, to a lot of people's way of thinking, an essential part of government. In fact, Winston Churchill actually extensively talks about why filibustering is great, because you want to change the other people's point of view. And if you do it well, you literally get to lambaste the other side in ways that you don't typically get to as part of a normal political back and forth. So you just have to look at the Democrats and go, okay, they're trying to play the system well, but the more that the speakers of both houses are speaking, the more you realize that not all Democrats are on the same page as they are. And in fact, by doing what they're doing now, they seem to be fracturing their party more and more. But what comes out of that? No idea. My crystal ball is not that clear.
Oh no, Jeff, but you're my only hope. I don't know what to say now. No, I agree. I think that it's really I mean, good. I'm glad that they're kind of being split. Democrats that are saying, "Hey, I was voted in here to get things done. I don't know what we're doing. I think that we had a good intention in the beginning, maybe, but let's realize the fact that if they're going to come this far with a deal, then maybe we should kind of take it and not just say, hey, all hail anti-Trump movement and stuff, and no matter what, he must be stopped. He can give me roses, petals, and everything else on every day, but I'm still totally against him." And I mean, I think that really does. Again, I'm kind of glad this happened, and just to see the shining colors of, hey, we thought that we were for these positions, and here are our talking points and stuff, and then we come to realize that maybe the things that we've been elected, the people we've elected in, and all the reasons to vote for this person, maybe now we're being shown what they really think, and who knows, maybe that is enough to change people's minds and say, hey, well, things have gone far enough. I think we've seen the radicalness here, and potentially, maybe people get angry because, like we've discussed before, like I said, the State of the Union address wasn't too bad. People kind of agreed with a lot of the things Trump said, so maybe this is the turning point potentially. I don't know. I think, and hopefully, if the government does shut down again, and this continues to happen, people will realize, oh, hey, because the first time it happened, I mean, I know people were like, oh, hey, end of the world, asteroid will destroy Earth. This is what can happen. Government can't take care of us. We're going to die. That people were dying in the streets, and that didn't happen. And there's good chance for another shutdown, and who knows how long that'll last. So potentially, this is great because then people will realize, hey, government shut down, and life still went on. So maybe not the worst thing in the world, and people can kind of become more resilient and say, hey, you know what, we need to kind of calm things down on that regard. Now, with that being said, on the downside, I do know that there was also recently a bipartisan agreement on the new budget deal, and that was to increase the spending on certain uh, avenues and stuff. I know that we try to increase spending with the military and of course increase entitlement spending, that kind of deal. So on the other bad news, we want to pass this kind of deal. So I also heard on the Shapiro show, Mr. Shapiro's talking about how we need to get rid of entitlements and that kind of thing. Do you think, Duff, that there is any way to really kind of get our budget, cut that down, or is it forever going to be a ending career of, all right, guys, we're going to spend less money, and then of course someone will be fired? Is there any end in our spending in sight, or probably not?
Uh, Probably not. Budgets are as much a political play to help the people who help you as they are an attempt to finance the country. And as Shapiro points out, it's like it appears that all these fiscal conservatives who are amongst the Republicans tend to forget that they're fiscal conservatives whenever it comes to money. And this particular bill, which is, I think, passed through your guys' Congress, wasn't actually a budget bill. And so therefore it didn't have to go through what's called the reconciliation process, where you actually have to balance out where the money's being allocated and how it's being spread out. So this is essentially a loan that doesn't have the same vetting process as a formal budget. But you go, okay, so they're now spending way more money, but the government actually has less money because of what Trump did in terms of lowering the personal tax rates and things like that. And so you go, okay, now it appears that the Republicans don't even understand what they just did. They shouldn't actually be having to increase the money. They shouldn't actually be having to sort of bow down to what the Democrats want, because they're assuming that economy and other things are going to be experiencing positive growth because people have more money in their pockets and the government actually has less money. So they don't understand the thing which they're trying to do on the right hand, because on the left hand, they're now spending money which they don't have because, in fact, they lowered taxes, so the government has less money on the whole, anyways. So it just becomes a muddle. I don't think anyone has any particular end goal here. And I think that's the major problem is that if you try and take the hardline conservative measure, which is we're going to cut as much government funding as possible because we want a small government, people who are reliant on government money are going to say, oh, but isn't that terrible? We'll vote for the other guy. But at the same time, if you're saying, I really worry about our debt, but at the I don't want taxes raised, but I still want all the same services, well, that's untenable too. So we're kind of muddled in the middle, and that's kind of bad because in the middle of political discourse is where you're supposed to be getting the compromises that work the best for everyone. But right now, it's the compromises which work best for no one. But that's politics once again.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I hope that they would have eventually some kind of, uh, deal, and of course, I don't know if anyone was expecting anything to actually change when it came to spending money. I mean, it would be nice to kind of go and, I don't know, audit the federal government, say, hey, why are you using XYZ money, and figure out, oh, hey, we have projects here that shouldn't be funded, or crazy reasons, or giving these people this money for that kind of reasons and stuff. So, of course, as Ben said, entitlements are a huge deal, and if we got rid of those, then maybe things would be better off. But then there's the freak out of, wait, government save me, and then they don't. So, they get scared and don't want to vote. And so I see the mentality of why they vote that kind of way and ordeal. However, I do hope that because of the tax cuts, people kind of realize, hey, you know what? When government doesn't take my money, then I can actually have money to spend on things. And when government doesn't take as much money from businesses, then they can actually hire me, and life is a little bit better. So I would imagine that maybe this is a good lesson to learn and things. But yeah, I don't think that
Well,
this is
think
gonna.
of it this way, though, AAA. At least the head of your country isn't more worried about people kind and allowing terrorists to come back into our country and making sure that they're safe and well taken care of.
Well, the people kind is definitely more important. It is the issue to understand. We need to make sure that everyone is inclusive, and I mean, who knows how true those people are, because otherwise, that would be just terrible. Pardon the awful pun, but yes, I did see those things, and I don't. I mean, you're not for the his correction on a girl that was oppressing herself. You don't think that that was the right thing to say?
Entomology, my friend, entomology. The word humankind or mankind doesn't actually derive from the same word as man. So the fact that they're jumping all over it is what's called the homonym fallacy. They sound alike, therefore they must be the same. And they don't derive the same way. And the thing which is doubly painful is Trudeau said people kind to make sure that there wasn't the man in the word. Because if you said, oh, humankind, it still has man in it, and therefore it's bad. So it's kind of like, okay, dude, don't make it look like you're bending over backwards to kiss your own butt all the time, because that was a woman who said it. She wasn't trying to be political in the use of her plural pronouns, and that's what you're jumping on. So it's like you're not actually speaking to that person. You are trying to change that person and not actually deal with the content of her message. And later Trudeau's like, oh, it was a joke. And it's like, well, I have a hard time telling when people are joking, but I can tell that that wasn't really a joke because of how you delivered it. It wasn't deadpan comedy. And you go, okay, this is where people like Jordan Peterson jumping on the pronoun thing and being like, this has turned into a word game. This has turned into newspeak where you can vilify someone simply by the words they choose. That our prime minister is engaging in this is horrifying. It's like, okay, Canada has always been more left-wing than the States, and I like living in Canada, but the fact that he's willing to change the Charter of Human Rights, Charter of Rights and Freedoms here in our country, the fact that he's willing to sort of jump into this postmodernist Marxist, let's say, gender orientated kind of sphere, just beggars belief. Because you go, what is your job as the prime minister? Sure, I want to see policies put in place that are egalitarian, that respect people, but also that treat people as individual actors who should be respected, not furthering the nanny state and furthering the let's mollycoddle everybody because bad feelings hurt people. Ugh.
I mean, I don't know. Do you when he was kind of in the getting in there, I don't as Ben was saying, he didn't have very many qualifications to be in office besides the fact of his last name. So you kind of would you agree with that?
That's an issue in that what are the qualifications to be the leader of a political party? Because on the one hand, celebrity and politics has gone hand in hand all over the world and all throughout history. There's no reason why Augustus Caesar should have been Caesar after Caesar, other than the fact that he was part of Caesar's family, right? It's the same thing with kings and queens and royal families. So, what this is essentially a throwback to nepotism and essentially classicism, despite the fact that Justin Trudeau would be like, "Oh no, no, no! I don't believe in class warfare." Kind of things like, "Well, no, you are definitely the beneficiary of your class, of your political establishment, and the fact that your dad was one of our prime ministers as well." So it's kind of goes into the saying that Winston Churchill had about democracy, where he's like, "Democracy is probably the worst type of government that you can imagine, except for all the other ones." And it's like political nepotism is pretty bad for selecting your political leaders. But it's just as bad as all the other ones too, on some level. Now, that's arguable for sure, but it is frustrating. But I don't think Ben's comment is particularly incisive in this case.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it was very surprising to see how the level, as you said, the level and the distance he went to go and say, "Hey, I'm really on your side. You're not on your side, but I'll help you out." And you're like, "Okay, that's you just basically mansplained, if you will, to a woman, and she was not even on that side of the fence there, and you just kind of assumed a lot of things. That's just crazy. But overall, who knows? I think that, like I said, we've discussed a lot tonight, and hopefully things, get better. It sounds like we're at the tipping point of a lot of things, a lot of cultural issues here. So I mean, I don't see that. I don't think things can get worse. Cross my fingers, but I mean, I think that they are getting pretty crazy. And I think now that the good news is people are finally kind of waking up to the fact of, oh hey, I've been hearing screams and unfortunate news from the media for so long, and here's the end result of, hey, the things that they talked about. Some of them came true. Some of the bad guys were good guys, vice versa, kind of deal. So things are coming out, but I'm hoping that we're potentially finally seeing the light of day and saying, "Hey, you represented this, but when I see your true colors, it's that." So, maybe things will get better, but I think it looks like things are becoming slightly more transparent. So let's hope that that continues and people kind of wake up and get more data to make better judgment calls and stuff. But anyway, Duff, any last thoughts for you?
Make sure to go and watch the news stories coming up around the Olympics in Pyeongchang, Korea, and how their government is suppressing people protesting that this merger between the two Koreas appears to be a political sham, more so than a reflection of any widespread belief amongst either sets of Korean people. So stay tuned there, guys.
Wow, okay, yeah, what Duff said, that's news to me. Okay, cool, that's crazy. Anyway, guys, thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the podcast, and we will see you next week. So, all right, say goodbye, Duff.
Have a good one, everybody.
All right, we'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much.